Dr. Magic! Dr. Magic! Dr. Magic! Where are you? Dr. Magic! Doctor!
The doctor is in. Greetings, boys and girls, ghosties and ghoulies, ladies and gentlemen. It's your good old pal, Dr. Magic, here at a mostly deserted Stagecrafters theater in Philadelphia. I say mostly deserted because all old theaters have some ghosts lurking in the wings. Well, Halloween's going to be a little different this year, but the good folks here at Stagecrafters have put together a virtual Halloween Scary Stories program with magic, scary stories, a host of colorful characters, just like your good friend here, Igor!
It's Igor!
Igor, my good friend Igor. How are you feeling? Are you ready for the show?
Yeah!
Tell me, you like magic tricks, don't you?
Yeah.
Well, I put together a virtual card trick just for the people at home.
Ooh.
In these times of social distancing, I was wondering, how could I do a card trick for you at home? I've developed a virtual card trick. As you can see, I have 5 different face cards. I'd like you to select one of these cards. Keep it in your head. You have it? Now keep thinking of your card and concentrate. If you concentrate hard enough, I am going to find your card. Let me see. Okay, I have it. I have it. This is your card. And if you look closely, you can see your card is no longer with the others. Your card is also a virtual card. Being virtual, that means it was never really there at all. You know, breaking and entering is never a good idea. Well, here's the story of a would-be burglar who got more than he bargained for.
Buster brushed aside the shrunken heads hanging in the window and climbed into Old Man Crenshaw's house. He waited until Crenshaw was gone, watching from the bushes as the ancient Ford backed slowly from the driveway and turned towards the center of town. It was shadowy inside, and he waited a full minute for his eyes to adjust to the dim light. Crenshaw never let anybody into his house, kept to himself except for regular shopping trips like this one every Monday afternoon. He lived on this lonely side road in northern Managansett for longer than anybody could remember. And about the only thing people knew about him was that he had lots of money and didn't keep it into a bank. Once a week, he came into town with 2 crisp $100 bills and did his shopping. Buster figured it was time to liberate some of that cash. The house was crowded with furniture, most of it covered in dust. There were 4 rooms on the ground floor and a narrow staircase leading upstairs. All right, old man, where do you keep it? Buster did a cursory search, found lots of books about magic and ghosts and things like that, but nothing resembling cash. He wanted to do this clean, get away with the money before Crenshaw returned. But if he couldn't find it, he had a folding knife in his pocket to help persuade the old geezer to be more forthcoming about his wealth. The second floor was even as dark as the first. 1 bedroom, a full bath, another room full of junk. And the last, a locked door. Gotcha. It wasn't much of a lock. Buster used the blade of his knife to pop it and entered. An enormous glass sculpture dominated the room. A vaguely piggish body resting on its haunches, with 2 bat wings raised like a cow above the head. The face was so ugly, Buster involuntarily retreated a step. blunt snout, narrow eyes, oversized jaw stretched wide, revealing needle-sharp teeth of shiny glass. The entire statue was transparent, so Buster had no difficulty at all seeing the large pile of $100 bills resting within, as if the creature had swallowed them whole. Jackpot! Once over his initial surprise, Buster wasn't shy about approaching the statue. He used his one hand to test its weight, discovered it was massive enough he wouldn't be able to move it. He might be able to break the glass if he could find something heavy, but that might cause more noise than he cared to make. The Wilsons next door might not be friendly with Crenshaw, but they lived close enough to hear and report any disturbance. The old man gets it out, so I ought to be able to do it. The jaws were opened wide, but the teeth were so long they didn't leave much room. Still, as long as he was careful. Buster cautiously raised his hand and stuck it down the statue's throat. Although he brushed the tips of the teeth more than once, he found the task easier than he'd expected. The cash was just at the limit of his reach. He wouldn't be able to take more than half of it. But that's all he needed. No reason to be a pig about it. Let Crenshaw keep enough to live on. He closed his hand on a pack of bills and began to withdraw. Something had stabbed him in the arm. Damn! He'd been careless. Buster eased his way out and winced as teeth from the lower jaw penetrated his flesh. What the hell? For some reason, there hadn't been as much clearance as before. It was almost as if the jaws were slowly closing on his arm. Blood trickled down his shirt. Buster tried to escape by changing his angle, but the sudden serrating pain caused him to jump, which only made things worse. He dropped the wad of bills and concentrated on escaping the trap. It took almost a half an hour and another score of cuts before Buster's arm was free, and he collapsed against the opposite wall, weak from shock and loss of blood. I hope I left a bad taste in your mouth, you bastard, he said softly. Then the statue slowly turned in his direction. Jaws opened wide again, and Buster realized he'd only made it hungry.
You know, mostly all old theaters are haunted with ghosts in the wings, up in the flies, and that still holds true for the grand old lady of Locust Street in Philadelphia, the Academy of Music. Here's a tale that gives a whole new meaning to the expression stage fright.
I never told anyone why I stopped working the Pennsylvania Ballet. The real reason, anyhow. Why I abruptly changed plans, moved across country, and didn't return to Philadelphia for nearly 18 years. And why even today I refuse to set foot on the Academy of Music stage on the eve of a closing night performance. It's because of a girl. Oh, but it's not what you think. Not like that, anyway. I wish to God it was, because she's dead, and has been for quite some time. A few of the older stagehands know her story, but they never speak of her. And the ones who do, they steer clear of the academy. They refuse to work there. The stagehand who told me her tale simply referred to her as the girl who stood in first position. He hung himself from the balcony rail a year later. He should have left like I did. You know, every old theater has their share of legends, spooky stories passed down generation to generation. I assumed this was just one of them. I was wrong. It was a Saturday, on the eve before closing night, and abnormally cold for October. I can remember warming my hands and seeing my breath. I don't remember what ballet it was, something old, perhaps Tchaikovsky or Stravinsky. And a group of us had gone out for drinks after the show. I don't know what time we left the bar, I just know it was late, well past midnight, and I had left my bag at the theater. It was backstage, stored in one of those blue road boxes we used to store equipment. I should have left it there till morning, but my keys were inside. So I went back. The guard let me in, although now I wish he hadn't. I walked upstage right toward the corridor near the dressing rooms where they stored the road boxes. The stage was dark, except for a dim ghost light that cast long shadows up the walls behind me. My footsteps sounded hollow. They echoed off the floor, over the orchestra pit, across the seats of the empty auditorium, clear up to the chandelier. It's funny, you don't realize how far sound travels in an empty theater until you're there alone at night. I rummaged through the road box until I found my bag. As I was searching for my keys, I thought I heard what sounded like point shoes digging into a rosin box. I shrugged it off. Then I heard it again, a scraping sound, long and slow, followed by what sounded like a child's voice telling me to leave, to get off her stage. Well, the hairs on my arm stood on end. And then I heard the voice again, slowly, deliberate, almost a whisper.
Get off my stage.
Well, my heart leapt into my throat. It hammered into my windpipe, suffocating me slowly. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. My feet were heavy like bricks, and a searing pain shot through them like someone had rammed a rusted blade up into the arch of my foot. I almost blacked out. And then I heard it again.
Get off my stage!
It was louder and angrier. I heard footsteps coming toward me. The unmistakable sound of point shoes rapping against dance floor. And as they got closer, I sensed a feeling of rage, the kind that rots souls and murders innocence. A rage so profound, it set my blood cold. I couldn't get warm. I couldn't get away. Then the footsteps stopped. Someone was behind me. I could feel their stare, their desire to do me harm. It passed through me like an electric current, raising my neck hairs like a dog's hackles. I could hear breathing. It was labored and wheezing, like someone being choked, gasping for air. I was afraid to turn around, terrified by the thought of what might greet me. And when I did, I saw something that I can never unsee. Something that still haunts me every time I close my eyes and every time I walk into a theater or the lights go down on stage. I saw a child, but not a child. Oh, her face was small, but her skin sallow and creased with age. Her limbs were emaciated and her eyes dark and sunken. Bereft of life, her tears cut shallow channels through layers of stage makeup. Her stare cut through me. I could feel her hatred building like water rising to a boil. And when I looked down at her feet, she was standing in first position. Her point shoes were bloodied, as if someone had driven a railroad spike through the tops of her feet. I don't know if it was terror holding me in place or her refusing to let me go, wanting me to pay for some horrific injustice that happened long ago. I wanted to cry out, but I couldn't take my eyes off her feet, and that made her angry. Oh, she cried out. It was sudden and shrill like picks in my ears. And she reached for me. Her fingers closed around my neck. Those tiny fingers were shriveled like aged leather. And then I don't remember much after that. My vision went foggy. Next, I found my cheek on the stage floor. It was cold, and the guard was standing over me, shaking me awake. I was laying by the dancers' ballet bars, terrified. I got up and ran out of that theater. And that was the last ballet I ever worked, and the last time I ever set foot on the Academy stage. Until now. Until tonight. I don't know her name. Just that she was a dancer, young, probably no older than 12. If you dig deep enough into the library stacks, you can still find it. The story of a young ballerina who never returned home from a closing night performance. Well, they found her 3 days later in the Academy. She was upstage right, stuffed into a corner behind a stack of scenery flats. Her hands were bound so tight, the ropes had snapped her wrists in half. Her nose and her mouth were taped shut, and tears filled her lifeless eyes. And her feet were forced into first position, nailed to the stage floor. And nobody knows who did it, or why. Maybe you think I'm nuts. Maybe I am. Maybe I've lost it and there's something inside me that's come unhinged. But I hope you don't think that, because I need you to understand why this is happening and why your tears are useless. I know what I saw that night was real. I know it like I know my own name. Clear as the fear that haunted the eyes of the now dead stagehand who warned me to stay away. And how I wish I had, because then perhaps I could stand backstage in the dark without looking over my shoulder, or close my eyes without seeing that vacant stare, or feeling her tiny fingers wrapped around my neck. But I can't. No more than I can block out her screams, or satiate her appetite, or appease her rage. She's why I left, and the reason why I returned, and why you should never be the last to leave a theater, and why I can't let you walk out of here tonight. Now, where did I put my hammer?
Now here's the story of a young boy who thought he had found a way to make a little extra cash.
Little Timmy was amazed. The story had seemed almost too fantastic to be real, but it was true. Just as his father told him, once that baby tooth had been worried loose from his gum, Timmy stuck it under the pillow that night, and voila! The next morning, 35 cents. The tooth fairy was real. Timmy was quick to probe daily with his tongue until he found the next loose tooth. Then, within 2 days, it was out, and he had stuck it under the pillow, and again, 35 cents. Timmy was getting rich fast. But now, he was stuck. No more loose teeth. But he figured he was a smart boy, and if he used his brain, he could keep the cash flowing. A quick check of his dad's toolbox solved the problem. vice grip pliers. He locked them on to a likely-looking incisor, and with a nice-sized ball-peen hammer, he whacked. With a spurt of blood and an excruciatingly sharp pain, out popped the tooth. Tears squeezed from Timmy's eyes until he spotted the tooth on the blood-splattered floor. Then, a gap-toothed smile spread across his face as he ran upstairs, tooth in hand, to bed. Once he had gotten to $1.75, Timmy was getting pretty curious about this tooth fairy character. So, that night, after washing the fresh blood off of the pliers and the ball-peen and putting them back in his dad's toolbox, Timmy carefully placed the newly extracted canine under the pillow, and then he slid his head deep under the pillow to get a good look at this character who exchanged money for teeth under the soft darkness of a cloth sack of feathers. Timmy made a small pocket to keep a sharp eye on the tooth, but sleep came before the fairy. Later, Timmy awoke with a gasp. Inches from his face was another face, smiling at him. He saw the long nose, bushy eyebrows, and the twinkle in the red eyes of the smiling fairy. "Hello, Timmy." Timmy now worried if he had broken any rules. "I was just curious," explained the boy. "Many are," nodded the knowing elf. "I wasn't going to ask for more money." "Well, the market really dictates what we leave," explained the funny little man. Timmy noticed his pointy ears. "I just wanted to see you take the tooth and leave the money." The man kept smiling, but his expression changed subtly. "I'm not here for the tooth." Timmy didn't get it. "You're not?" The fairy responded in an elfin, sing-song voice. "No, that's the tooth fairy you're thinking of." Timmy felt a chill up his spine and his mouth went dry. "Well, who are you, then?" The gnome-like fellow chuckled. "If you think real hard, Timmy, that'll give you a clue as to what it is you left under your pillow that I'm here to get." Timmy, although deep under the covers, went cold. He knew he'd messed up, but how? Who was this fairy, if not the tooth? And what was under the pillow that this fairy wanted? Think. Think. Timmy's eyes went wide as the very process of thinking gave him the answer. The fairy smiled and slid closer. "You should be happy, Timmy. The tooth fairy only leaves 35 cents for teeth. I leave a whole $1 for any little boy that leaves me a brain under his pillow."
And now here's an illusion from the magical land of India, with help from my faithful assistant Igor.
Igor!
And a special guest. You know, I rarely have trouble sleeping. When I go to bed, I'm dead to the world. But here's the story about a boy who couldn't sleep.
In the cartoons, all kinds of things talked. Trees, flowers, dogs, cats, birds, toasters. In the dark, all kinds of things talk too, only more softly.
Where is it? Why is it? What is it? Who is it?
Brian listened to the clock, to the clocks. There was the electric alarm clock in his bedroom that made strange noises, like hums and purrs, especially when he had it sitting on the hard wood of the dresser top. There was also the old-fashioned grandfather clock that stood in the hallway just outside his bedroom door, the one that clanged and chimed and gonged so loudly that sometimes he thought it was the loudest sound in the world, beating into his brain. When his mom asked him why he didn't sleep at night, he always told her it was because of the two clocks, the hum and purr of the bedroom clock, and the tick and the clang and the chime and the gong of the grandfather clock going on and on like they were arguing. But she only laughed, told him he had a vivid imagination.
Where is it? Why is it? What is it? Who is it?
Maybe she was right. Because after a while, Brian found he could hear other voices in the dark too. The window whined as if it had no friends, even when he had been sure there wasn't much wind outside. The floor creaked and cracked when there wasn't anyone walking on it, as if it were complaining in its sleep about how people walked on it all day.
Where is it? Why is it? What is it? Who is it?
Go away, Brian ordered. Leave me alone. Let me sleep. And then the voices would stop for a while, as if they were actually considering leaving him alone. Or they would change tone, as if they were confused that Brian had decided to talk to them at last.
I don't know. Do you know? I don't know. Do you know?
Sometimes. Maybe. Brian would fall asleep. He would dream about shining a flashlight on the window, shining a flashlight on his electric clock, shining a flashlight on the floor. Everywhere he pointed his flashlight, he would find a mouth talking to him. And then he would wake up, and they would be talking to him.
Where is it? Why is it? What is it? Who is it?
Brian had heard these voices in his room at night for years. He was getting older and older, and when he became a teenager, he found he was embarrassed by the voices in his room. He was too old to be hearing voices.
Where is it? Why is it? What is it? Who is it?
The voices cried again one night, and Brian was sick and tired of the whole thing. Leave me alone, he cried.
Where is it?
I don't know. Just leave me alone. He climbed out of bed and started looking at the floor, the window, picking up things and throwing them around because he was looking for the mouths that were saying these things.
Why is it?
How should I know? Shut up, just shut up. Brian turned on the light in his room, and he was shocked to find that he could still hear the voices, even when it wasn't dark in the room.
What is it?
You tell me! I can't find it! I can't find it anywhere! Brian ran to his bedroom door and threw it open, thinking that he could outrun the voices, thinking that he could swallow his pride and tell his mom and dad about it, and they would explain to him exactly what he was hearing. They would explain it all away, and then he would never hear the voices again.
Who is it?
A soft voice said from behind him. Brian turned around and looked at the figure sleeping in his bed, talking to himself. He walked over for a closer look. The figure in his bed looked exactly like him,
Who is it?
said the figure in the bed.
Who is it?
Brian looked down at his own sleeping face and whispered carefully so as not to awaken himself. It's me.
You know, I love coming down here and spending hours in my laboratory, but here's someone with a different point of view.
I hunker in a corner of the castle and watch rain come in through the ceiling. Watch it loosen flakes of blood on the stone floor. Rust-colored water runs down the iron grates. It is my blood, given to me by Father, spilled by Father. I try to sleep on my bed of straw, but the straw is wet and smells of rot, and the smell of rot gives me nightmares. I dream of many graves. From the elaborate tombs of dukes and barons to the unhallowed trenches where they plant thieves. All graves are the same. They are cold and lonely places where greedy worms take sustenance. Fat drops of water break apart upon my flesh, and I rise to find someplace warm, someplace dry. My heart pounds within its vast cavity as I enter Father's bedroom. I am forbidden here. Hundreds of candles radiate shadow-cleansing light like an army of God's angels. I feel heat from the flames and am afraid. Father's curtained bed is massive, white, silken, brilliant as a sunlit cloud. What might it be like to sleep here, I wonder? What dreams might I have? Dreams like Father? Dreams of creation? Before I succumb to the temptation to lie down, I turn away and flee the room, plod down darkened halls, return to my dripping straw. Wet, stinking, hard. That is what I am. Sometimes Father tests me. I can read, and he gives me books, and I read them, and he tests me.
Science. Who was Luigi Galvani?
The Italian scientist who discovered that electricity can be produced by chemical reaction.
Poetry. Name the source. Ingrate. He had of me all he could have. I made him just and right, sufficient to have stood, though free to fall.
Paradise Lost.
Anatomy. Name the components of the hindbrain.
Cerebellum, pons, metencephalon, middle cerebellar peduncles. I start to say something else. Falter. Pause. He arches his eyebrows and waits. My breathing grows labored. There's something else. I know there was something else!
You forgot the fourth ventricle.
I'm sorry, Father, I say. Showing no emotion, he shakes his head.
I am not your father.
I'm sorry, Master. But Father isn't interested in sorry. Father is interested only in perfection. He picks up his knife, ignoring my cries as he cuts open my head. Breath held in check, I tread through Father's workroom. Here he keeps knives and saws, his needle and thread. Here he spends days and nights and years toiling, tinkering, honing, howling his failures and triumphs aloud to no one but himself. jars line shelves like delicacies in a shop. Hands clutch brown water. Eyes and ears and tongues bobbed lazily in their containers. I have seen these things many times in many ways. But then I find new things in new clean jars, and I cannot look away. I see hands that are much smaller than mine. I see smooth, slender arms. I see a delicate jaw. I see breasts. There's more. I find a table on which lies a form under a sheet, and for a while I contemplate its gentle contours, struck dumb by the shrouded curves and dips and swells. Trembling, I pinch the corner of the sheet as gently as I can between thumb and forefinger. If Father finds out I've been here, he will hurt me. He will tear me with his knives. He will rend me with his saws. He will punch holes in my flesh and drain the blood from my body. He will sever my hands, pull out my teeth and eyes. He will put my brain in a jar. I pull back the sheet. My flesh is coarse, like rawhide. Her flesh is white and perfect. My hair is like unruly wire. Hers, golden curls of silk. I am an unworthy son. My father has replaced me. It takes father decades to construct his children. It takes me a second to become a monster. I hunker in a corner of the castle and watch rain come in through the ceiling to wash skin and glass, blood and formaldehyde from my sticky hands. Lightning rips open the sky, and I flinch at the light and noise. Jove is a mean, angry god. Father is coming home, and I've been bad.
Igor! Igor, come in here, my good friend. I've been working on a new experiment. I've been working on making solid objects penetrable. In other words, we take a solid steel plate, such as this one, and you see it has 2 holes on it. Would you hold on to that? And I have this frame, and this frame is made out of certain materials which have the properties to make solid objects penetrable. Watch closely. This fits into the frame, and the holes will line up, just like that, for the center. Now, I'd like you, my good friend, to place both your arms through the holes. No, both arms right through the holes. Have I ever harmed you before? Well, don't worry about that. Do you want to get your fresh meat tonight? All right, both arms in the holes, please. Very good. All the way through. Now, do you feel the tingling from the frame? Do you feel the magic happening? Watch as we make the steel plate penetrable. I think it worked. I think it worked. Let's take a look. You see now the plate. Lift up your arms, and you can see the plate has penetrated through both arms. And you're perfectly all right, as far as your arms are concerned. And that's the magical penetration. Being in a theater, how could we neglect the bard? Here's a classic scene from the Scottish play.
Thrice the brinded cat hath mewed. Thrice and once the hedge pig whined.
Harp your cries, 'tis time 'tis time.
Round about the cauldron go, in the poison entrails throw. Toad that under cold stone days and nights has 31. Sweltered venom sleeping got, boil thou first in the charmed pot.
Double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble. Fillet of a fenny snake, in the cauldron boil and bake. Eye of newt and toe of frog, wool of bat and tongue of dog. Adder's fork and blind worm sting, lizard leg and owlet's wing. For a charm of powerful trouble, like a hell broth, boil and bubble. Double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble. Scale of dragon, tooth of wolf, witch's mummy, maw and gulf of the ravened Saul sea shark, root of hemlock digged in the dark. Make the gruel thick and slab, add thereto a tiger's chaudron for the ingredients of our cauldron. Double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble. Cool it with a baboon's blood, then the charm is firm and good. By the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes.
Well, we hope you enjoyed our virtual Halloween Scary Stories night here at the Stagecrafters Theater. It's your old pal, Dr. Magic, wishing you a safe and happy Halloween. And until next year, keep the fright alive.